Colombia and Venezuela's defense ministers met this Saturday in San Antonio del Táchira within the framework of the reopening of the common border on Monday. Tropical storm Ian moves northward in the Caribbean Sea with potential effects on Cuba, Jamaica, and Cayman Islands. The high-level general debate of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly gathers heads of states and high officials in New York for a fifth day. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The defense ministers of Colombia and Venezuela, Iván Velázquez and Vladimir Padrino López, met in San Antonio del Táchira before the official reopening of the common border. Both ministers held a meeting this Saturday, just 2 days before the reopening of the common border, scheduled for Monday, September 26. This action is part of the agenda between Caracas and Bogota, established on July 28 in a meeting between foreign ministers Carlos Faria of Venezuela and Álvaro Leiva of Colombia. During the meeting, both defense ministers held a press conference where Colombian official Iván Velázquez emphasized the importance of reopening the border and what it means for rebuilding confident relations between the two countries. Brazil's former president and presidential candidate Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva attended a public event in Ipatinga, Minas Gerais state. Lula spoke about his ideas to promote social and economic recovery in the country. Former President Dilma Rousseff and Alexander Calli, who is run for state governor, accompanied Lula in the action. On Saturday, Lula will make a rally for Sao Paulo, and on Sunday he will end with campaigning events in Rio de Janeiro.
There are two beautiful girls here, one here and the other there. I'm looking at their faces because I can't lie to you. I want to come back to fix this country and improve people's lives. It's impossible in a country this big to have people going hungry. The state of Minas Gerais can have more than 1.2 million people going hungry.
Meanwhile, Jair Bolsonaro, current president and Lula's main opponent in the next elections, also carry out different campaign activities in the center-west of the country. Bolsonaro went on a motorcycle rally that ended with an act in Divinopolis, capital of Minas Gerais state. Both candidates have campaigned hard in interior states because it is a region that provides an important amount of votes. According to the most recent Datafolha polling, so far survey figures show Bolsonaro is losing by double digits in the first voting round, and the margin increases to 14% in the second round.
Optando pelo fracasso, pela miséria. E acima agora, queremos uma grande disputa.
Tropical storm Ian is moving westward across the central Caribbean Sea at 22 km per hour with the strong possibility of affecting Jamaica, Cayman Islands, and Cuba. According to the United States Meteorological Institute, the storm is located in eastern Caribbean waters, about 485 km southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, and about 950 km southeast of Grand Cayman. The storm registered maximum sustained winds of 75 km per hour and is expected to continue on a similar course and speed in the next few hours, turning west-northwest and northwest this Sunday. Authorities in the U.S. state of Florida are on high alert in at least 24 counties in anticipation of the possible arrival of Ian as a major hurricane by mid-next week. On Friday, the government of Honduras decreed a national emergency due to heavy rains in the Central American country, which have left at least 9 people dead and over 17,000 affected. A presidential communication informed that at the end of a meeting to analyze the situation after the heavy rains that have hit the country in recent days, the president of the nation, Xiomara Castro, submitted the emergency measure to the Council of Ministers to be voted on by the cabinet members. The president ordered her ministers to travel to the affected areas to provide support and inform the Honduran head of state about the conditions in the areas under their responsibility before taking any decisions. The Honduran entity maintains an emergency red alert in 8 municipalities of the departments of Cortes, Lloro, and Atlantida, North and Caribbean areas of the Central American country, and a yellow alert of caution in other 13 departments due to heavy rains. Hurricane Fiona hit eastern Canada on Saturday with winds exceeding 140 kilometers per hour after passing over the island of Bermuda. The United States National Hurricane Center said that Fiona could affect the Atlantic coast of Canada as a powerful cyclone with strong winds, storm surge, and intense rainfall. In this sense, Canadian authorities warned that this could become one of the most severe storms in the history of the country. Meanwhile, they sent emergency alerts to the Atlantic area and advised the evacuation of the towns that could be affected by Fiona in order to avoid human losses. In Cyprus, firefighters and emergency units controlled a forest fire near the village of Alasa in the port city of Limassol. According to authorities, the flames destroyed trees and wild vegetation and threatened a recycling plant and a gas station. The fire started early Thursday night and was brought under control around 2 a.m. local time. Andreas Ketty said that firefighting forces used large amounts of water and foam to extinguish vehicle fires. Over 17 fire departments and the forestry department, at least 2 bulldozers in addition to 9 aircraft, were deployed in the area. In Japan, at least 2 people died after Typhoon Talas hit the center of the country on Saturday with heavy rains and strong winds. The Kyoto agency reported that the 2 men who died were victims of a landslide in Shizuoka Prefecture, while 3 others were injured. They also reported that 1 person is missing. At least 114,000 households in the territory remain without electricity supply as the landslide knocked down power poles. In this context, the authorities ordered the evacuation of 1.78 million people to protect them from the typhoon. The weather phenomenon is expected to reach the capital, Tokyo, on Sunday morning. Let's take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, questioned the continued application of the economic and financial blockade against Cuba and the intervention in democratic process taking place in Nicaragua and Venezuela.
Unjust economic embargo, undeclared war, and criminal interventions against Cuba permitted to continue without let-up, despite overwhelming, near-unanimous denunciation by this General Assembly. Why do we not resist unequivocally the sordid attempts by imperialism to subvert the duly elected governments of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Republic of Nicaragua?
The Premier also called for reparations for the native genocide and the enslavement of Africans committed by Europeans in the Caribbean countries.
A special concern, too, for our Caribbean is the urgent issue of reparations from the European states for their commission of native genocide and the enslavement of Africans that has caused painful legacies of underdevelopment. Time has surely now come for this issue to be addressed urgently. Reparations is a just and juridically grounded demand. It ought not to evoke confrontation from well-meaning peoples, but support.
Prime Minister of Grenada, Dickon Mitchell, stated that confronting the climate crisis will require a complete transformation of our mindset and behaviors and call for specific actions to save our planet for future generations.
I call on all young people to take action. It is not yet too late to do what is necessary to safeguard our planet for future generations. But the time for action is now. The reality is, the leaders of today will not be around to feel the consequences of their decisions. It is therefore up to our youth to lead the charge for the future they want to see. To all young people, I challenge you today to choose to be agents of change over victims of climate change. It can start with small actions that cause ripple effects throughout your families and friend circles, your communities, and eventually the wider world.
The Premier also condemned the blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba and called for the elimination of Cuba from the State Department's list of countries that co-sponsor terrorism.
That the removal of the US-imposed economic, commercial, and financial blockade against Cuba will facilitate economic and social change there. Additionally, we call for Cuba to be removed from the US State Department's list of countries that are co-sponsors of terrorism.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, Wang Yi, began his speech by referring to the challenges we face today after COVID-19 pandemic and called for solidarity instead of division.
We must strengthen solidarity and oppose division. President Xi stated, the countries around the world are like passengers on the same ship who share a common stake. All of us should pull together to navigate the ship through storm toward a bright future. Our world must embrace diverse civilizations in order to make continuous advances, and mankind must pursue an inclusive path in order to achieve modernization. Peace, development, fairness, justice, democracy, and freedom are common values of humanity. Difference in system should not be used as an excuse to create division. Still less should democracy and human rights be used as tools or weapons to achieve political ends. We should stand against drawing ideological lines and expand common ground to promote world peace and development.
The representative of China, during his statement, also condemned the blockade imposed by the United States against Cuba and declared that the One China principle must be respected without interference as a safeguard for peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait.
China will continue to work for peaceful reunification with the greatest sincerity and efforts. To realize this goal, we must combat Taiwan independence separatist activities with the firmest resolve and take the most forceful steps to repulse external interference. Only by resolutely forestalling separatist activities can we forge a true foundation for peaceful reunification. Only when China is completely reunified can there be enduring peace across the Taiwan Strait. Any scheme to interfere in China's internal affairs is bound to meet the strong opposition of all Chinese, and any move to obstruct China's reunification is bound to be crushed by the wheels of history.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, talked about their relations with the United States, their allies, and how they have invaded many countries in the east of the world.
The United States and allies want to stop the march of history. So at some point in the past, declaring that they were victorious in the Cold War, Washington erected themselves into an almost envoy of God on earth, without any obligations, but only the sacred right to act with impunity wherever and wherever they want. And this can be done anywhere against any state, especially if they're somehow displeased, the self-proclaimed masters of the world. We do recall the wars of aggressions very far from American shores in Yugoslavia, in Iraq, and Libya, which claimed many hundred thousands of peaceful lives.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia talked about how the United States maintains a blockade against Cuba for more than 60 years and invite to the United Nations to pay more attention to that issue.
American blockade of Cuba, more than 60 years old. The General Assembly has been for a long time and insistently demanding that be immediately lifted, and this is being done by the absolute majority of voices. The Secretary General, whose duty include helping implement General Assembly decisions, must, of course, pay special attention to this issue. The Secretary General has a special role also in mobilizing efforts to overcome food and energy crises, which resulted in the wake of an out-of-control money emission in the United States and the European Union during the pandemic, and as a result of irresponsible, unprofessional acts by the European Union in the hydrocarbon fuel markets.
Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Demeke Mekonnen, talked about the development of his country after the COVID-19 pandemic and how they have confronted the conflicts in the area. He also asked for the end of every conflict in the world, specifically in the African continent.
Ethiopia has made significant progress in its socio-economic development and democratization. These years have also been compounded by challenges that tested our survival as a nation. In November 2020, the most heinous and treasonous attack was waged against the Ethiopian National Defense Force that protected not only the peace and stability of Ethiopia, but also helped keep peace in other countries on behalf of the United Nations and the African Union.
We have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Russia, the unionist referendum in the self-proclaimed People's Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, as well as part of the regions of Kherson and Zaporizhia, continues on its second day. The plebiscite is being held despite the constant Ukrainian troops bombings of the main liberated cities controlled by Moscow. Meanwhile, the local population continues to attend the polling stations, which will remain open until September 27th, while at the end of the first day, voter turnout in the plebiscite in Kherson region was 15.31% of the total number of registered voters and 20.52% in Zaporizhia region. Lugansk and Donetsk Republic showed 29.97% and 23.67% respectively. In Europe, the rise of the US dollar has pushed local currencies to historic minimums. The dollar's pace at record highs is pushing other currencies such as the euro and the British pound to the sidelines, reaching new multi-decade lows on Friday. Specialists point out that the situation has led to a relentless liquidation of those currencies based on the belief that their central banks are lagging behind the US Federal Reserve's commitment to control inflation at all costs, even at the price of an economic slowdown. This Saturday, in the commune of Assisi in central Italy, Pope Francis signed a pact with young people from all over the world to build an economy of peace and not of war. In the pact signed during a three-day meeting entitled Francesco's Economy, at least 1,000 young people from 100 countries committed themselves to build an economy at the service of people, families, and life, respectful of every man, woman, child, elderly, or vulnerable person. In his speech, the pontiff recalled that so far the world's population has not been able to preserve the planet, which also hinders the preservation of peace. In this regard, he stressed that to these young people, who are economists, students, entrepreneurs, and workers, that if they want an economy which fights misery in all its forms and creates wealth for all, they must work together so that it is based on respect to the earth.
Our generation has left you with a rich heritage, but we haven't known how to protect the planet and are not secure in peace. The situation is such that we can't just wait until the next international summit, which might not be useful. The earth burns today, and today we must change at all levels.
Around 35 people have died in the protests taking place in the country for the past week since the death of Masha Amini. According to Iranian state television in Europe, the number of dead includes demonstrators and policemen. It is also detailed that this number is a preliminary count and not an official figure. In Iran, since Friday, protests in favor and against the use of the Islamic hijab have been taking place in the main cities of the country after the death of Masha Amini, who lost her life 3 days after being arrested for improper use of the hijab. On the other hand, security forces claim that the protests respond to a political strategy on behalf of Iran's enemies in order to destabilize the country. The Central African Republic stopped court on Friday an old presidential decree setting up a committee to rewrite the constitution, which had sparked fears Faustin Archange Touadéra was seeking a third term in office. In a legal setback for the president, the Constitutional Court declared that the decrees are unconstitutional and invalid and noted the basic law could only be revised after the Senate has been set up. The 65-year-old president was first elected in 2016, then re-elected in a highly controversial poll in 2020, The current constitution does not allow him to run again. The court also said that any referendum on revising the constitution had to be initiated by the president, but that he could not go against the oath he had taken at his investiture to refrain from modifying the number and length of his mandates.
The bar's fight is to guarantee the independence of justice, that the judges can make their decisions with regard only to the law without any pressure from either side. As far as what the public authorities are going to do in relation to this decision, I think that we are in the Republic and the members of this public authority are a part of this Republic and the law is applicable for everyone. I don't believe for a moment that the public authorities can take the risk of going against a court decision. That would be confirming that we are saying here. That is to say, the annihilation of judiciary power.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. And now you can also follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.